Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to compare two fascinating approaches to generate test cases, one using AI capabilities of ChatGPT and the other through traditional method, which is, experience of testers. Okay, before we move forward, first we need to understand is what is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an advanced language model developed by OpenAI. It is based on GPT, that is generative pre-trained transformer architecture, which is a type of transformer model used widely in natural language processing tasks. It's trained on different range of internet text to generate responses that can mimic actual human-like conversation based on the inputs, obviously. This makes it particularly effective for applications requiring interaction with the users in natural language, right? And some of the examples can be chat boxes, virtual assistants, and various interactive tools from which you will retrieve information, right? And the interesting part is this model is pre-trained on large corpus of text data, and then we have specialization. It is fine-tuned to do specific tasks or keep on improving on certain aspects of performance. What those aspects can be: understanding context, minimizing biased responses. So this two-step process is key to its ability to handle a wide range of topics and conversation scenarios effectively. Okay, now we know what is ChatGPT, right? Now the next important question that we need to understand is how does ChatGPT 3.5 works? So let's divide it into three parts. One is train, the second part is understand, and then the third part is respond. And let's understand the phases. So think of GPT 3.5 just like a student who has read million of books. These books help it learn about languages, facts, stories, and all kind of data available, right? And not only that, it also helps it with understanding how a specific question should be answered, right? So that is what the training phase is, where ChatGPT is getting trained. Now the second phase that comes into action is understanding. You know what? When we type something into ChatGPT 3.5, what happens behind the scenes? It reads, it understands what you have written. It's like talking to a friend who listens carefully before replying. So you can say ChatGPT is a good listener. So that is what the understand phase is. The third phase is responding. Based on what it knows, so GPT 3.5, what it does, it writes back a response and it tries to be as accurate and helpful as possible based on what? The information it has learned so far, which is getting improved on daily basis. Let's take an example. If I ask ChatGPT 3.5, tell me a story about a brave knight. Now, what it will do, based on its understanding, based on the information it has gone through so far, it will create a story about a knight, and the details and languages will be similar to something which a human will write. I, I hope this will give you a fair idea about what is ChatGPT and how does it work. Now let's look at the next slide. So in addition to what we know about ChatGPT, it's important to understand that every day ChatGPT consumes vast amount of data and uses machine learning technique to enhance its understanding and performance. So what's happening? This continuous learning process is helping ChatGPT improve its language comprehension, context awareness, and ability to generate relevant responses. So whatever you feed to ChatGPT, it's learning, it's consuming, and that's how it is enhancing itself on daily basis. Okay, today what we are going to do is we are going to create test cases related to authentication and authorization, as we had discussed earlier, through ChatGPT and through manual experience. So before we go any forward, let's first be very clear on what is authentication and authorization. So you can think of authentication like showing your iCard when you enter a secure building, right? The security guard checks if the ID is valid and if you are the person you claim to be. So essentially what we mean here is authentication is a process of verifying who someone is. In terms of computer system, if we talk about it, or an application, it involves confirming the identity of a user trying to gain access, right? This is usually done through username, passwords, biometrics, or security tokens or OTP, right? So what it essentially is doing, it's answering a question. Are you who you say you are? So that is what authentication is. What is authorization? Now imagine again, let's go back to that example. Now imagine after entering the building, right? You want to access a restricted floor or a specific room, let's say a server room, right? That at that point, your access card through which you entered the building won't work, right? If you go and use your entry access card on a server room door, it won't work because you are an authentic user, but you are not authorized to access certain areas. So basically, authorization is happening after authentication. And it is what? It is a process of verifying what specific, in terms of computer, applications, what specific applications, files, and data a user has access to. This involves checking your permissions that might have been set by your network administrator, or in case of application through web application administrator. Like for instance, a normal user might have access to read files, a manager might be able to read and alter files, an IT admin might have access to the system settings. It answers the question, who are you, what you are allowed to do. Okay, so in terms of software testing, when you're testing an application, ensuring that both authentication and authorization works correctly, it is crucial for security, right? For authentication testing, you would check if only the correct user can log in with valid credentials and that invalid or unauthorized access attempts are properly blocked. For authorization testing, you would verify if the user can only access features and data permitted to their roles, and accessing anything beyond the permission results in access being denied. So let's look at this example now. So as we have already discussed, there is a username, password. You can submit your username and password, and what will happen is authentication. Then once authentication is done, behind the scene, what happens? Let's say it's a website with student and teacher account. A role check will happen. The person who was authenticated, what kind of role it has. So validating the role it has is essentially authorization. And what it will do, it will give the permissions based on the role that authentic user has, right? For example, a student logs in, they will get the student role. Okay, now let's do the interesting part. We are going to check not test cases but generic scenarios on testing the authentication and authorization of a certain application or of any web application. So I'm just putting a question here, right? And these are the test cases that I get here: valid credential, invalid credential, password complexity, expiry, MFA, session management, role access, privilege escalation, right? Delegated administrator, security headers, logout functionality, re-authentication, auditing logging, third-party integration testing. So if you look at it, it's a very extensive list, right? You have very detailed test case, almost 20 in that, right? Even session hijacking and fixation, right? So now let's move forward and see, are all test cases covered, or there's something, we need to test beyond what is being defined here. Okay, so we have seen test cases from ChatGPT. You can go and pause the test cases and have a look at it. So it has created almost everything. If you look at it, it's almost 20 test cases. But there are a couple of things missing that I would like to highlight. Uh, it's like more of the ways to do it is not explained properly, or the scenario itself is completely missing. And the ones that I'm going to show you today here are the ones against which I have logged defect when I was testing the application on daily basis, right? So let's talk about them one by one. So cross role URL accessibility is one thing where what you can do is you can log in through a student, create a session. Now take a intermittent URL from a teacher's access. So what I essentially mean to say here is when you are testing, you have access to student's account, you have access to a teacher's account. Log in as a student on one browser, open another browser in a incognito mode, or maybe you're testing on Chrome, open a profile in Firefox. Log in as a teacher, go to some page which only teacher has access to. For example, edit attendance page. Copy the URL, come back to the student browser, copy paste the URL in the address bar, and try to launch it. So essentially, what we are doing, we are testing here is that the teacher access or authorization is being checked even in the student session, right? So even a student is an authentic user and authorized to have a student role, it should not get access to the teacher's modules, right? The second one is UI versus API security consistency. So this one is my favorite because a lot of time what happens is developer will put all the security on the UI side, but at the API side, those securities are missing. What I mean by security here is authorization. So it will check for authentication, but it will miss out on checking on authorization. How you can test it? Very simple. Uh, let's keep this example consistent. So edit attendance page. So there is an API running behind. Just go and check, can you use that API using students session or authentication, right? That shouldn't happen essentially. Testing intermittent URL. So at times the authorization is done globally across the pages using some framework. Normally that is how they will put this authentication or session check there. But there in old applications, what happened or what I found at times, certain pages are missing the session check, and that will result into an intermittent URL getting rendered. The third one is the last one that I will like to talk about is token validation across sessions. So what happens? This is another one which is very interesting. So normally when these days when API authenticates, it will create a token and that token will be passed everywhere. That is another area of concern, that for each user a separate token is generated. The token itself is also validating authorization and authentication. So now comes the interesting part. We should use ChatGPT to consume test cases, or we should use our brain. So look, as testers, we all know that creating test cases can be a time-consuming task. This is where ChatGPT comes in handy. By using ChatGPT, we can quickly generate a comprehensive set of test cases, saving us valuable time and effort. This allows us to focus on more critical aspects of the testing, right? Where which essentially is increasing our productivity. However, while ChatGPT is an incredibly powerful tool, it is also essential to remember that is that it might not be providing you 100% coverage. Testing is not just about following a checklist, it's art of constructive destruction. It's about thinking creatively and finding ways to break application in unexpected ways. You are customer's advocate, yeah. You have to put yourself in customer shoes. So while I highly recommend using ChatGPT to generate test cases, don't assume it covers every possible scenario. Always apply your creativity and think outside the box. Look for edge cases, explore different user behaviors, and challenge the system in the ways that a machine might not consider. Incorporating ChatGPT into our workflow can certainly enhance our testing process, but you know what? The human factor cannot be ignored. Creativity is irreplaceable. So use ChatGPT to augment your efforts, but always strive to bring your unique perspective to the table. Remember, effective testing is a blend of technology and creativity. By leveraging both, we can ensure high quality and more robust applications. Happy testing and keep pushing the boundaries. So that will be all for the day, and I hope it is helpful. Thank you.